evening and welcome to Your Sound. Tonight's album choice is a homegrown classic chosen by my guest. But before I introduce them, let's find out about this Gibraltar music scene game changer.
Nada crece a la sombra de recuerdo de mi mente. Nadie cree en nuestra historia. Nadie habla, nadie entiende, no, no.
Released in 1999, La Cuesta de Mr Bond by Melon Diesel saw a group of 5 young guys from Gibraltar shoot up the Spanish album charts and enjoy a level of success and popularity which was unprecedented in Gibraltarian music. Originally known as Treehouse, the band had a passionate following in its hometown, becoming a staple of Friday nights playing packed bars. After years of gigging in the 90s and releasing a successful self-produced EP, the band travelled to Madrid in search of a record deal. After a few months struggling to obtain a deal, the band returned home to the rock. But not long after, Sony Spain tracked the band down after an agent had overheard their EP playing in a restaurant. With the record deal signed for 3 albums, the band changed its name to Melon Diesel, named after an infamous shot in Collingwood's, a popular live venue for the band. The album was recorded at Chapel Studios, Lincolnshire, and Moody Studios in London, with production duties by Barry Sage, a veteran who had worked with artists such as the Rolling Stones and New Order. Recorded between January and February 1999 and released in May that same year, the album reached the top 5 of the Spanish album charts and produced a #1 single in Quiero un Camino.
Quiero escuchar hoy tu voz, pendiente de tus palabras. Quiero un camino entre los dos, siempre atento a tu mirada.
With several other singles reaching the top 5 in the single charts. The album was certified platinum with sales of over 200,000.
Empezamos a tocar dentro de 5 minutos. Ahí abajo.
¿Dónde estáis?
Estamos ahora mismo en Valencia.
The album was supported by a tour of Spain spanning 2 years and over 140 shows, and attended by over 600,000 fans. Influenced by the classic rock sounds of bands such as Led Zeppelin and the sounds of 90s grunge music, the album's mix of anthemic tracks and heartfelt ballads, like Cuesta de Mr Bond, is seen as a watershed cultural moment in Gibraltarian music, inspiring countless Gibraltarian musicians, and lovingly remembered as providing a musical backdrop for a generation of Gibraltarians. Melon Diesel's La Cuesta de Mr Bond, an album chosen by a fellow musician. He fronts local band Jetstream, a hard-working band who have been super busy writing, recording and playing a whole bunch of international tour dates. Their latest single, The Last Goodbye, just dropped earlier this month, as well as the official video for their track Delta Blues. Next month they will be supporting Top Loader at the O2 Academy in Brixton, London. So 2019 is set to be a big year for the Jets. Welcome, Nolan Frendo.
Thanks, Guy.
Welcome to the show.
To be here. Thank you.
So, amazing choice of album, a Gibraltarian, classic.
Yeah, I thought I'd keep it local, but definitely inspiring to me anyhow.
I mean, let's jump straight into it. When did you first hear the album?
I heard it at the beach once. I think it was Catalan Bay. A friend of mine had a Walkman, and he's like, "You want to listen to this?" And I'm like, "Okay, I'll give it a listen." And I remember sitting down there amongst friends, and everyone else seemed to get lost. I seemed to be alone there in that moment whilst I was listening to this, and for some reason it just captured me. And when I asked who it was, he's like very casually, "They're just a band from Gibraltar." I'm like, "Hang on, what? This cannot be true, right?" And then I sort of got hooked from then on. And as I returned home from the beach that day, I asked my brother Damien, and he happened to have the album. Right. So he basically lost it that day.
What had you been listening to up until that point?
Prior to that, I was very influenced by my friends' choices. I was listening to house music, breakbeat, nothing related at all. I mean, I never listened to the radio. I mean, growing up, my dad would listen to Johnny Cash, Luis Cobos, Nat King Cole, stuff like that, which again is not related to what I like. So this was groundbreaking for me in the sense that I'd never heard anything like it, and Yeah.
So was it your first sort of introduction to guitar-led?
Absolutely.
Music?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And did you get a chance, like, off the back of that? So you find out that the locals, whatever, you managed to get your hands on the album. Was that a point where then you started to? Was it played on repeat? Was this the sort of thing that then you wanted to tell the rest of your mates about?
Yeah. I mean, my mum and dad must have been sick of me playing this at home. Yeah, it was definitely played on repeat to the point of annoying people, and it was definitely inspiring. I mean, this made me think, oh, hang on. If these guys are doing it and they're from Gibraltar, they live within the vicinity, then why can't I do it? Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm only singing in the shower at this point, but why not? And it really opened up my doors and aspirations.
You hear this album, it kind of like is a stepping stone for you into, you know, becoming an artist, a musician yourself.
Correct.
Who did you take on this journey next to then, you know, start singing and get a band together?
Well, I was imitating, at this point, I was imitating Dylan and everything he did in the music videos and all this. And then obviously it was a big boom locally and everyone spoke about it in school. And then I picked upon a few people who enjoyed the album and they happened to be musicians. And through that, I'm like, well, I really like it as well. Maybe my brother tells me I sing all right. Maybe we could give it a try. And we just, because of this, we got into a room and we just messed about jamming some of their songs and other covers in turn, yeah.
And what was the scene locally like at that time? Can you remember?
It was only you guys, I think, Blackout back in the day.
Blackout.
Yeah, I think we had Blackout, you had Melon Diesel, Reach hadn't come out yet. They weren't far off. Mm-hmm. But I wasn't too aware of what was happening in the scene back then anyhow. I was just really in awe of this and I wanted to try it out myself.
Mm-hmm. And a band that, you know, even though being from Gibraltar and they had up until that time been singing in English, they then started singing in Spanish. Now, did that make you think maybe I should start singing in Spanish?
It did initially, yeah, of course, because they broke through singing in Spanish. But it didn't deter from my determination to try and do it myself anyway, you know, and just perform. I had no aspirations anyway. I was just a kid who wanted to perform music. But the sort of the ease of having two languages to choose from helped out, of course.
And that day when you listened to the album on the beach, what was that first track that you heard? Can you remember?
It was Contracorriente.
Okay.
My friend pressed play from the beginning,
from the start of the album. And so apart from Contracorriente, then what other track would you say really stood out? I
think for me, the one that stood out the most was the third track, Desaparecida.
Okay.
Just such a powerful track. The lyrics are really meaningful. And the catch to it, I mean, the whole album is just raw. Mm-hmm. It's just, there's nothing complicated about it. It's simple chords, great bass lines, punchy drums, and just amazing melodies that just stick. But yeah, I think initially off the bat, it was Desaparecida.
Mm-hmm. And so after hearing Melon Diesel, did you then sort of start to look at the genre in particular and start discovering other?
Not initially. Initially, I just stuck to this, and then when I started playing with my first band, William Westlake, he said, dude, you need to listen to Pearl Jam.
Okay.
I'm like, why is that? He's like, because if you like Melon Diesel, you're gonna like Pearl Jam. Okay. And he gave me a copy of 10.
Right.
And instantly, I mean, you could tell some similarities in there. Dylan's voice, when he has that raspy kind of voice, the grungy guitars. So yeah, I could relate to that. And then I kind of forgot about these guys for a bit, and I got completely obsessed with Pearl Jam. And then I moved on to the grunge scene itself, and then I expanded from there. But
okay, so being from Gibraltar, being so young when the band launched, had you been to any big gigs beforehand, or was Melon Diesel like one of the first gigs that you
Correct.
You saw?
Yeah, I mean, the first gig I went to, I think, was down at the fair where the Commonwealth Park is now. It used to be the NOP. Yeah. And then I saw them in the Algeciras Bull Ring, if I'm not mistaken. And for me, that was huge. I went with my brothers, and I was like, "Oh my God, these guys are superstars." There was nothing better for me. You know? And then from then on, obviously, I did see other concerts, but they were basically my first experience. I'd never seen any local bands in concerts or anything before that. Mm-hmm.
And what about coming now, this day? You know, how often do you refer back to Melon Diesel albums? Is it still sit in your record collection?
Yeah, it's still there, of course, but I try not to play it often because I try to. for me, if I play it too often, it kind of takes away from that memory. I like to play it sporadically, maybe once a year or something like that, where it takes me back to that place when I was, 13, 14.
Yeah.
And it just felt so good hearing these guys and letting them inspire me to do what I've been doing for 12 plus years now myself.
And would you say that any of the songs in particular, when you were in your band, when you started out, what song in particular was the one that you most wanted to cover or you most wanted to sing?
Obviously, like I said before, Desaparecida, because it had an impact on me off the bat. Quiero un Camino was always, it was one of the easiest songs to perform, right. I guess. And Contracorriente, because at the time it was the single out there and it had this funky video where they were all jumping about and Dylan was dancing and doing his thing. So yeah, I mean, I probably throughout the years tried to cover every single track.
Excellent. Well, Nolan, we're going to go to a really short break and we'll come back to this after the break. That's the end of part one. Don't go anywhere, as after the break we'll be finding out a bit more about Nolan and his album choice, as well as hearing his Dead Wax tracks. So see you in a couple of minutes. Welcome back to Your Sound. I'm joined in the studio this week by Nolan Frendo, who's been talking about his album of choice, which is Melon Diesel's La Cuesta de Mr Bond. So, Nolan, you've heard this band, you were in awe of this band for so many years, and then you met them, they became your friends.
Yeah, that's correct.
And how did that, all start?
I mean, it started back in the day, I mean, you can relate, when we used to rehearse in Wellington Front. And I think Dylan used to visit your room frequently because he liked what you guys were doing or whatever. And then one day he just stepped into our room next door and he basically gave me a tip off the bat. He said, listen, you're hurting your voice, you're not singing properly. Let me take you to the specialist in Algeciras. And I'm like, really? You want to help me? Yeah. And he invited me back to one of his rehearsals one day, promising me to take me after the rehearsal. And I basically got access to a rehearsal, which I was a bit stuttered about. And then Dylan took me to the specialist. I had a few sessions there with the specialist, and I had a rapport with Dylan through that. Then unfortunately, when they broke up, Guy and Adrian started doing a lot of stuff acoustically in Corks and Nelsons and stuff. And I started attending those and eventually singing and performing with them. And we grew a great bond. And now we're currently recording with Danny Fa as well. So things are going well. I mean, I know them all. I get along with them all pretty well, and it's amazing, sort of looking up to them and now having them as people who you can call friends or talk to or whatever. It's pretty cool.
I mean, they're such a big part of the local music scene, especially for bands, So I don't think I'd be able to think of any artist that probably might say, "Oh, Melon Diesel had no influence on me." At least not of our sort of generation.
Nah,
it was a really big deal.
Everyone from our generation must have been influenced by them, or at least respect them for what they achieved, for sure. I mean, to this day, you still hear cars driving by, listening to these guys.
So you mentioned in part one, you mentioned your first band.
Yeah.
Just want to ask you a bit about sort of the journey that you've taken to Jetstream. So, who else you've collaborated with and played with before, this massive project that you're part of now, which is Jetstream?
So my first band, called Undecided, for obvious reasons, we had William Westlake, Gavin Garcia, Richard Cortés, Philip Macedo, and Nick Cortés on drums. And yeah, we were just kids basically, and we were just having fun. We were doing different things now. We did a bit of Pearl Jam, a bit of Incubus. We were just covering bands that we enjoyed, and we got a bit of traction through that. Then that dissolved. I moved on with Ellipse, I think it was, with Daryl Allman, with William again, Peter Borge on bass, and Justin Phillips on guitar. And we did that for a bit. We had a good stint in sax, where people attended frequently to our gigs. And then I got a call from the guys from Milberjack when Lawrence had left, and I auditioned for them. I was successful. I did a couple of gigs with them. Didn't work out. And then this is when I stopped about 11 years ago. I had nothing going. And Philip Valverde called me up to do one of his New Year's specials in Casemates. And that's where Justin was involved too, as part of the nucleus of several bands that Philip had set up. And Justin was like, "Oh, you looking to do anything? I've got a drummer and a guitarist, and we can do something." I'm like, "What is this?" He's like, "Yeah, my drummer's Dylan Ferrer." I'm like, "Excuse me?" He's like, "Yeah, drummer's Dylan, guitar's Stuart Whitwell, and I can do the bass." And I'm like, "Okay, let's give it a try." Brilliant. So we just compiled a list of songs that we wanted to cover initially, and that's how it started. And I mean, I've had the odd side project here and there with Mr. Darcy and dabbed on other bits. But yeah, I've been with Jetstream now for, it'll be 11 years this year. Yeah.
And you've been with Jetstream now. You've been releasing quite a number of singles. You've been touring as well. How's all of that going? Being based in Gibraltar now, doing international gigs. How do you manage that as a band?
I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not easy. We've all got full-time jobs to manage. Some of us have families, so it's not easy. But I'm a firm believer, if you want to do something, you'll just do it. You know, if you're passionate about something and it feels strongly within you, then you just go ahead and do it, and you'll find a way to do it. But it's a big shift from doing covers in Nelson's or Celebrity Wine Bar or whatever it was, to now doing this, where we're solely focused on our own music. The reception you get from people when it's generally good, it's amazing. I mean, you can relate to that. There's nothing greater than getting a good response for your own music as opposed to doing covers. But yeah, the shift has been gradual. Now we're doing more and more. We aim to do more in this year, in 2019. Like was mentioned briefly, we've already started the year with a bang. We've released the video for Delta Blues. We've released a new single called The Last Goodbye, which a video will follow soon. And we've got, I think, 6 gigs lined up already this year, from Belgium to Toledo to the UK, to festivals as well. So yeah, things are looking good.
I mean, I want to ask you, coming back to one of the points you made about how you perhaps used to play more covers in the past, and we seem to be locally on the music scene in Gibraltar, a lot of covers are played by artists when they start up, and it's a good way to learn. How important do you think it is that bands start playing covers, or do you think they should really start writing sooner, or how do you think that
I don't believe it's important. I mean, I regret not starting doing our original material way beforehand, for sure. But doing the scene with covers definitely helped garner an interest, and definitely helped creating a fan base, if you like, where people would be interested in watching Jetstream. So it does help to that extent, but you do waste a lot of time, and you can get carried away with it, because it is great, don't get me wrong. You start playing songs that people know, they start dancing and singing and getting involved, and you love it, it's great. But you can get lost in it. Yeah.
And on the scene at the moment, are there any artists that you see on the original side of things that have sort of caught your ear, caught your
Yeah,
attention?
I mean, I wouldn't say there's lots, it's not blossoming, but you've got Layla and the Layla Rose Band. They're fantastic. I mean, obviously, Layla's the young gun, and she's supported by these amazing musicians that are full of experience, and the band sounds huge and incredible, and her songs are really good. They're really mature for her age, so I really like that. I really like Crimson Clover's new single.
Right, great.
Which is pretty cool as well.
That Britpop sound that they have.
Yeah, like the Oasis kind of thing. It's pretty cool. So yeah, there is definitely stuff out there. Obviously, Evan Torrente's stuff is great. I've had the privilege of hearing that, and it's amazing. And I wish him the best with that. Jesse McLaren, he's always producing the goods, and I'm very proud of him. He's one of the good ones. Yeah, so there is stuff out there, but there's not as much as there used to be, I don't think.
Let's hope the future is brighter then. You know?
Let's hope so,
Let's
yeah.
hope there's more coming.
It's still good though.
Yeah. So Nolan, even though we've been focusing on La Cuesta de Mr Bond, which, by the way, a shout out to Danny Bujeja for lending us this, platinum certification, beautiful piece that we've been using on set today.
Which, by the way, I'm going to steal.
Yes, I don't think it's tied down. We also tend to ask our guests to choose one track that means something to them from any other artist, and we call it the Dead Wax track. And before we talk about it, we're going to take a look at a little clip.
Okay.
I
So, Nolan, that's really taken us back here in the studio. That's Hero by Chad Kroger and Josie Scott. So why have you chosen that track?
Well, it's simple. This is the first song that I ever sang in front of an audience with a band or otherwise. So it's meaningful in the sense that it sort of propelled me to do more, you know? I mean, it was grueling in the rehearsal room, and you can attest to that, because you were just next door. We would play this song over and over and over again. It never got any better. But,
Don't put yourself in.
Nah,
great.
it was all right. But yeah, but basically, it's where everything started for me, singing in a band, you know, and it inspired me to continue doing it and to definitely improve my voice. But yeah, it means something to me. I mean, prior to you just playing that video there, I'd not heard that song in years, for the same reason that I'm sick of it. But it's meaningful at the same time.
Yeah. Excellent. So, Nolan, just before we wrap up for tonight, I want to ask you some quick fire questions.
Okay.
And the first one I'd like to ask you is, what musician, dead or alive, would you most like to meet and why?
Chris Cornell. He's the best vocalist in the world, potentially ever.
Big influence of yours?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you'd never know based on what I write. But lyrically, musically, the guy was a genius, and his vocal range was out of this world, so definitely him.
Great. What's the last song you heard before coming here to the studio today?
It was a Star Sailor song called Poor Misguided Fool.
Okay. Yeah,
Which is random.
It's quite a classic.
Yeah, not heard it in a while.
Excellent. Yeah. And what song do you most wish you'd written the melody to?
That's a tough one for a quick fire. The melody to... I'm going to say something absurd like Sweet Caroline, because everyone just sings that song when they're happy and drunk. No matter what venue you're in, you just whack it on and everyone sings it. So it must be a good melody.
Okay,
and everyone knows that melody.
Yeah, excellent. And what would you say is your favourite party song?
Favourite party song? I like Hey Ya.
All right, okay.
By Outkast, definitely.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's a good party song. Anytime it goes on, you could just start shaking to it.
Did you ever cover that song?
Yeah, we did.
All right.
Yeah, we did with the Lips in sax, and I have a video of you dancing along to it.
Oh, really? Great. I'd love to see that one day.
I'll show you.
Not. Well, Nolan, it's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Pleasure's all mine.
For taking the time, coming out, and it's been great hearing about how Melon Diesel influenced you.
Absolutely.
And the rest of your tastes in music. All the best for the future with Jetstream. I hope you have a cracking year, and we'll catch up again soon. Well, that's all for this week. Please join me again next week, where I'll be joined by another guest to find out about their favourite album and tracks and the role they have played in their life. Good night.